It was a chilly December afternoon in New York City. Barron Trump, accompanied by his well-dressed bodyguards, was walking briskly down a crowded street. Paparazzi were lurking, cameras clicking with every step he took. Amidst the chaos, a faint sound caught Barron's attention. He stopped abruptly, causing his guards to freeze. He turned towards a man sitting on the sidewalk. The man was hunched over, his wheelchair visibly old and broken. His hands trembled as he tried to pick up a small plastic bag that had fallen. Barron's eyes narrowed. For a moment, his guards hesitated, assuming he'd ignore the situation like most celebrities. But Barron stepped forward. His 6'4" frame towered over the man as he bent down and handed him the bag. "Are you okay?" Barron asked softly, his voice breaking through the cold silence. The man looked up, his eyes filled with disbelief. I'm fine," he stammered, though it was clear he wasn't. The bodyguards exchanged confused glances. Was the young Trump really doing this? Bystanders began to gather, whispering. Little did anyone know, this small act of kindness was just the beginning. The man's name was Henry. Once a mechanic, he had lost everything, his health, his family, and his home, after a tragic accident. Now he roamed the streets, living on scraps and fleeting kindness. "What's your name, sir?" Barron asked, kneeling beside him. "Henry," the man whispered, avoiding eye contact. His clothes were tattered, his fingers worn from years of hardship. Barron studied him for a moment, then asked something unexpected. "What do you need most right now?" Henry hesitated. "Nothing, I'm fine." Barron didn't buy it. He saw the desperation in Henry's eyes, the kind that only comes from years of struggle. Barron stood up, scanning the busy street. "Wait here," he said firmly. His guards frowned, urging him to move on. "Mr. Trump, we have a schedule." But Barron wasn't listening. He walked into a nearby cafe and emerged minutes later with a steaming cup of coffee, a sandwich, and a warm blanket. When he handed them to Henry, the man burst into tears. "Why are you doing this for me?" he asked, his voice shaking. Barron's response was simple yet profound. "Because you deserve better." The crowd around them grew larger. People began recording with their phones, capturing every moment. The spectacle of Barron Trump, a member of one of the world's most powerful families, helping a homeless man was too compelling to ignore. "Is that really him?" someone murmured. "He could just walk away. But look at him," another said. Barron didn't care about the murmurs. He crouched beside Henry, wrapping the blanket around his frail shoulders. "When was the last time you ate?" Barron asked. Henry looked down, embarrassed. "I don't remember." Barron's jaw tightened. "That's going to change today," he said. He turned to one of his bodyguards. "Find the nearest shelter. Make sure they have a bed for him tonight." The guard looked skeptical but nodded, pulling out his phone. As Barron waited, he sat on the cold pavement beside Henry, ignoring the stares and whispers. It was a gesture so genuine, so unexpected, that even the hardest skeptics in the crowd felt a lump in their throats. What no one knew was that this was just the start of a story that would change lives forever. As the bodyguards returned with the address of a nearby shelter, Barron realized Henry's wheelchair was barely functional. One wheel was bent, and the seat was torn, exposing Henry to the cold. Barron frowned, his sharp gaze shifting to the crowd. "Does anyone know a place that repairs wheelchairs around here?" he asked loudly, breaking the silence. A woman in the crowd replied hesitantly, "There's a repair shop 3 blocks away, but it's expensive." Without hesitation, Barron gestured to his guards. "Take him there. I'll cover the cost." Henry's hands trembled as he gripped the edges of his wheelchair. "You don't have to do this," he said, his voice cracking. Barron knelt again, looking him straight in the eye. "Yes, I do. You've gone through enough. Let me help." The bodyguards looked uncomfortable, not used to such delays in their carefully planned schedule. Yet, they followed his orders. As Henry was escorted to the shop, Barron stayed behind, speaking briefly with the cafe owner nearby. A few minutes later, he rejoined the group. But what Barron had just arranged would leave everyone speechless. The repair shop owner was stunned when Barron Trump walked through the door with Henry. The young man's celebrity status was obvious, yet his demeanor was far from what the shopkeeper expected. "How soon can you fix this wheelchair?" Barron asked. The owner examined it. "It'll take a couple of hours, but—" He hesitated. "The repairs won't hold long. This chair is falling apart." Barron nodded thoughtfully. "Then don't just repair it. Replace it. Find him the best wheelchair you have." Henry gasped, shaking his head. No, that's too much. Please, I'm fine with what I have." But Barron's calm voice cut through Henry's protests. "You deserve better. Let me do this." The shopkeeper hurried to bring out a brand-new, state-of-the-art wheelchair. It gleamed under the fluorescent lights, equipped with features Henry had never imagined. As the transaction was being finalized, Henry sat quietly in a corner, overwhelmed. Tears streamed down his face, though he tried to hide them. Barron noticed and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "This is just the beginning," he said. The shopkeeper handed Henry the new wheelchair, but what Barron did next left everyone in the room speechless. After paying for the wheelchair, Barron turned to Henry with a determined look. "This isn't where your story ends, Henry. We'll get you back on your feet." Henry's lips quivered as he looked up at the young Trump. "Why me? There are so many others like me out there. Why do you care?" Barron's voice softened. "Because everyone deserves a second chance. And sometimes, people just need someone to believe in them." Outside, a crowd had gathered, their curiosity piqued. As Barron and Henry stepped out, the flashes of cameras lit up the evening sky. Barron raised his hand, silencing the murmurs. "This man," he began, his voice steady, "has endured more than most of us could imagine. But he's not invisible. Not to me, and not to any of you." The crowd fell silent. Many wiped tears from their eyes as Barron continued. "Let's stop walking past people like Henry. Let's make kindness our first reaction." He helped Henry into the new wheelchair and turned to his guards. "We're not done yet. Find out what else he needs to rebuild his life." The crowd erupted in applause, but Barron wasn't doing this for recognition. What he had planned next would leave the world in awe. As Barron and Henry made their way down the street, the crowd slowly began to disperse, though many stayed back, murmuring about what they had just witnessed. Henry sat in his new wheelchair, his hands resting nervously on the armrests. "Thank you," Henry whispered, his voice barely audible. He was a man not used to kindness, and this moment felt too good to be true. Barron gave him a small smile. "You don't need to thank me. You deserve this." Henry's eyes watered as he looked down. "I've been invisible for so long. I forgot what it feels like to matter." Barron paused, his expression softening. "You've always mattered, Henry. The world just forgot how to see people like you. But not anymore." Barron's guards approached cautiously, reminding him of his packed schedule. He raised a hand, silencing them. "Clear my appointments for the rest of the day," he said firmly. His guards exchanged nervous glances, but Barron's tone left no room for argument. He had made a decision, and no schedule or obligation would stop him now. Little did Henry know, Barron was about to give him something he hadn't had in years: hope. Barron led Henry into a nearby restaurant, ignoring the whispers and stares from other diners. The staff scrambled to accommodate the unexpected VIP guest, but Barron's focus remained on Henry. "What do you feel like eating?" Barron asked as they sat at a quiet table. Henry hesitated. "Anything. I don't want to be a burden." Barron shook his head. "You're not a burden. Order whatever you want." As the waiter brought out a menu, Henry's hands trembled. He hadn't been in a restaurant in years. After some coaxing, he settled on a hearty meal. As they waited for their food, Henry opened up. He spoke about his accident, the loss of his family, and the struggles of living on the streets. Barron listened intently, his eyes never leaving Henry's. When the food arrived, Henry ate slowly, savoring every bite. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he muttered, "I forgot what real food tastes like." Barron smiled softly. "There's more where this came from." The moment was intimate, yet powerful. Bystanders watched in awe, some wiping their own tears. What they didn't realize was that Barron wasn't done helping Henry. He had a plan, a big one. As they finished their meal, Barron excused himself briefly, stepping outside to make a phone call. The chill in the air didn't bother him as he dialed a number. "Dad," Barron said when the call connected. "I need your help with something." On the other end, Donald Trump sounded surprised. "Barron, what's going on?" "I met someone today," Barron explained, glancing through the restaurant window at Henry. "He's been through a lot, and I want to help him. But I can't do it alone." Trump was silent for a moment before replying. "Tell me what you need." Barron outlined his plan, his voice steady and confident. By the time he hung up, he knew his father's influence would make a huge difference. When Barron returned to the table, Henry looked at him curiously. "Everything okay?" Barron smiled. "Better than okay. Things are about to change for you, Henry." The sincerity in Barron's voice brought tears to Henry's eyes. For the first time in years, he dared to believe that maybe, just maybe, his life could turn around. But what Barron had planned next would leave Henry and the world completely speechless. Barron was barely settled back into his seat when his phone rang. The caller ID read, "Dad." His heart skipped a beat. "Hello," Barron said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Barron, I've arranged a meeting," his father, Donald Trump, said on the other end. "I've spoken with someone who can help Henry, but I need you to meet with them tomorrow morning. We're going to get him back on his feet." Barron's eyes widened. "Thank you, Dad. I knew you'd help." Henry, who had been quietly observing, didn't realize the significance of Barron's conversation. He thought Barron was just being kind, but he didn't know the lengths Barron was going to make a real difference in his life. When Barron hung up the phone, he smiled at Henry. "There's something big coming your way. It's all going to change, Henry. You've been given a second chance." Tears welled up in Henry's eyes, his hands trembling. "But I don't know how to repay you." Barron looked him in the eye. "You don't have to repay me. Just live your life. That's all I ask." For the first time, Henry believed in something greater than his struggles. The next day, Barron and his father arrived at a luxury apartment complex in downtown Manhattan. Barron felt the weight of the situation, knowing that he was about to give Henry a life he never imagined. They were greeted by a kind woman named Jessica, who ran a charity dedicated to helping disabled individuals get back on their feet. "I heard about your situation, Henry," she said softly. "We've got a full team ready to assist you." Henry's eyes were wide with disbelief. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Barron replied with a reassuring smile. "Just trust us." Jessica led them into a beautifully furnished apartment, where Henry's new life was waiting. "This will be your home. It's fully equipped for your needs." Barron stood at the doorway, watching Henry slowly take all in. He had been homeless for so long, and now everything seemed like a dream. Henry turned to Barron, his face a mix of shock and gratitude. "This is too much. I don't deserve this." Barron placed a hand on his shoulder. "You do. You just need to accept it." As the days passed, Henry slowly began to adapt to his new life. Barron checked in with him daily, making sure he had everything he needed. The transformation was incredible. Henry, once withdrawn and defeated, now smiled more often. One afternoon, Barron stopped by the apartment to find Henry reading a book by the window, a cup of tea beside him. "How's it going?" Barron asked, walking into the room. "It feels strange," Henry admitted, "like I'm living someone else's life. But I'm grateful, Barron. I never thought this could happen." Barron sat down beside him. "This is your life now. You don't have to struggle anymore." Over the next few weeks, Barron continued to help Henry with the resources he needed, including medical care, therapy, and social connections. Henry was now able to walk with a cane, something he hadn't done in years. Barron watched as Henry's confidence grew. The man who once felt invisible now stood taller, with a future ahead of him. Barron couldn't help but feel proud of what he had done, not just for Henry, but for the world. A few weeks had passed, and Henry's life had truly started to change. Barron continued to check in on him, and with each visit, Henry became more and more grateful for the new life he was living. However, Barron knew there was still more to be done. One day, Barron took Henry out to a nearby park. The sun was shining brightly, and the trees rustled in the light breeze. Henry had come a long way from the man he had once been, the man who had sat on a street corner, invisible to the world. As they walked, Barron noticed a small group of people sitting on a bench, watching Henry and Barron with curious eyes. Henry slowed down, unsure of what to do. "Don't worry about them," Barron said softly, noticing his discomfort. "Just be yourself." With Barron's words in his heart, Henry smiled and began to walk toward the bench. The people sitting there smiled back, recognizing him. One woman stood up, coming over to shake his hand. "I don't know what to say," she said. "You're an inspiration to me." Henry's eyes welled up with tears. He had never felt more alive, more seen. As Henry's confidence grew, Barron took it upon himself to make sure Henry could support himself long-term. One afternoon, Barron sat down with him in his apartment, helping him update his resume. "You're ready, Henry," Barron said with determination. "It's time to get you back into the workforce. I'm going to set up an interview for you tomorrow." Henry's face faltered. "I don't know if I can do this. It's been so long." Barron smiled at him, offering words of encouragement. "You've been through much worse. You can handle this." The next day, Barron drove Henry to his first job interview. Henry had dressed carefully, and Barron could see his nerves. "Relax," Barron said, his voice calm and steady. "You've got this." When Henry entered the building for his interview, Barron stood by the door, watching him go. It was a big step, but Barron had faith in him. Hours later, Henry returned with a broad smile on his face. "I got the job." Barron's heart swelled with pride. "I knew you could do it." Henry's first day on the job was a turning point in his life. He had come so far, not just in terms of physical recovery, but in his self-worth. Barron had made sure Henry had everything he needed, and now it was time to let him spread his wings. On his first day, Barron drove him to the office, silently supporting him as he entered the building. After Henry went inside, Barron waited outside, reflecting on the incredible journey they had been on together. It wasn't just the physical changes that mattered. It was the emotional transformation. Henry was no longer the man who had been invisible in society. He was now a man with a purpose, a future, and most importantly, a sense of belonging. Barron smiled as Henry exited the building that evening. "How did it go?" Henry's face lit up. "It went great. I feel like I finally have a purpose again." Barron placed a hand on his shoulder. "I knew you could do it, and you're going to keep going. You're unstoppable now." It had been weeks since Henry's first day at work, and his life had transformed in ways he never imagined. Barron kept his promise. He remained by Henry's side, supporting him through every step of the journey. But one final surprise was waiting for Henry, something so monumental that it would change everything for him. One afternoon, Barron called Henry, asking him to meet at a nearby park. Henry, now more confident, agreed without hesitation. When he arrived, Barron was already there, standing beside a sleek car with a bow on top. "What's this?" Henry asked, his heart racing. Barron smiled. "It's yours." Henry's eyes widened in disbelief. "A car? I don't deserve this." "You deserve more than this, Henry," Barron replied with a soft chuckle. "This is to help you start your new life. No more struggling. No more feeling invisible." With shaking hands, Henry reached out and touched the car. He couldn't believe it. The tears started to flow. Unstoppable now. This man, this young man with so much power and privilege, had given him everything he never thought he could have. Barron stepped forward and hugged him. "You don't have to thank me. You've earned this. Now go and live." A year had passed since that unforgettable day when Barron had stepped into Henry's life. Henry had become a different person, stronger, more confident, and filled with hope. He had kept his job, made new friends, and even moved into a better apartment. One day, as he walked down the street, Henry spotted Barron across the street, surrounded by his usual bodyguards. Barron waved and walked over, a warm smile on his face. "Henry, it's good to see you," Barron said. Henry grinned, his heart full. I never thought I'd be here. Not this far. Thank you for everything, Barron. I can't believe how much my life has changed. Barron nodded. You're the one who changed it. I just helped you see what you could do. I'll always be here for you. They stood there for a moment, in the middle of the busy street, as people passed by, unaware of the bond between them. Henry had come so far, but Barron's kindness had set the foundation for a life full of possibility. As time went on, Henry continued to flourish, and Barron's act of kindness became a story that spread across social media, inspiring millions. People began to see Barron not just as a celebrity, but as a young man with compassion, maturity, and a deep understanding of what it meant to help others. On his birthday, Barron received a message from Henry, who was now thriving. You saved my life, Barron, and I'll never forget it. Barron read the message, his heart swelling with pride. He had made a real difference in the world, and that, more than any accolade or title, was the true legacy he would leave behind. The world had seen the real Barron Trump, and it was more than anyone could have imagined.